What's going on, guys? Today it looks like we're seeing a little pullback for the miners, which to me is good because I want to see these recent gaps be filled so we can move higher. But we also have Bitcoin slowly rising as well today on some really positive news, and I think this is a big catalyst. And it's GBTC selling easing up a bit while BlackRock Fidelity continues seeing large inflows. We'll talk about that. We'll also talk about Bitcoin and what I'm watching for a couple of the miners. And let's start off with this Bitcoin news because I do think it's a big deal for the market. And I'll leave this article down below for you. BlackRock spot Bitcoin ETF volumes topping GBTC today, signaling a market shift here. And BlackRock spot Bitcoin ETF volumes surpassing GBTC for the first time here hints at a slowdown in outflows of Grayscale's ETF, which has had over 5 billion in outflows since its launch, while the other spot Bitcoin ETFs have had total inflows of over 5.8 billion. And you can see the total outflows for a GBTC here now at $5 billion. They're now at nearly $21 billion in assets, so we'll probably still continue seeing a bit of selling pressure. But today we have IBIT, or the iShares Bitcoin Trust, with $155 million in volume today, while GBTC has seen 112, nearly $113 million in volume. But these new spot Bitcoin ETFs are continuing to increase their assets. We now have nearly $2.2 billion in IBIT. We have now nearly $2 billion in Fidelity's Bitcoin ETF. And within a couple weeks, we'll have ARK and BITB or Bitwise Bitcoin ETF getting towards $1 billion. So hopefully moving forwards, we continue to see these outflows of GBTC being overshadowed by inflows from the other spot Bitcoin ETFs. We're starting to see a shift here. This is big. And BlackRock has now accumulated over 52,000 Bitcoin since its launch earlier this month. And here's an interesting comparison. Looking at MicroStrategy, taking 4 years to gain 190,000 Bitcoin nearly. And we have BlackRock in only a few weeks now has 1/4 of that amount. Just imagine when a few months go by, BlackRock continues loading up. If you think this isn't still the time to be buying Bitcoin, I don't know what to tell you. And as I mentioned yesterday, Bitcoin finally flipped above its ascending support again. It's been reacting to this trend line for literally months, since October, where it was a previous resistance, flipped as support, flipped back down as resistance, and now we broke this recent downtrend here, this descending line here. We broke that, and it popped us back into this ascending support. Hopefully we can maintain this from here on out. And while we may find resistance here at 44,000, I think an inevitable break of 44,000 is going to cause us to retest our recent high. Once we get through this volume profile, break above 44,000, there's really not much keeping us from testing our previous high right around 49,000. But I think the really exciting thing to be looking forward to is once we break 50,000, and better yet, once we break all-time highs. That's when the hype really begins. That's when everyone starts looking at Bitcoin. Once we start creating those new all-time highs. Could take a couple of months to get there, but we will get there. Now, looking at CleanSpark, while on some shorter term time frames, it did indicate that we're going to break out of this downtrend. On the daily, it looks like we're seeing a false breakout. And while we did break out of this descending resistance here, we didn't get a candle to close out of it. So that's one thing I am watching for, and if we do actually close out of this descending resistance, I do believe a break of 950 will get us into the 10s. It's a matter of breaking that 950 though. But what I'd really like to see personally is us to fill this gap. This would bring us to the low 7s, and I'm a bit disappointed to see this gap here. We recently filled our last gap back in the high 7s. We bottomed out at roughly 650 before finally rising back up. Now, if we do go down to fill this gap, I would like to see us find support at 7 and not actually break lower than our previous low. And this is my ideal scenario. We come up, we fill this 950, come back down, fill up this gap, get that out of the way so we don't have to worry about it in the future. And on that gap fill, my hope is that we don't create new lows. We create higher lows. The market notices that. We hold or we create an ascending support by creating a new higher low. And then we go on to break that 950, head towards the 10s. That might not be how things play out, but that would be my ideal scenario. I personally want this gap fill because it's just one more thing that could potentially push us down when we get running. The majority of gaps do get filled, so I'd rather see this filled now rather than later. But I do believe now is still a great time to get into the miners. For instance, CleanSpark is still down nearly 40% from its recent high. And if you've been looking to add to these miners, now is a great time. While we may come down a little bit more, in my opinion, we're definitely closer to the local bottom than we are to the local top. I also want to talk about Btbt. This is another one that's severely discounted. I think it's a great time to be getting into Btbt here. And we have another instance of a gap created by the market. For this one, all we need is roughly a 7% drop here to fill this gap. I would love to see this quickly be filled, find support right around there, and bounce, but not come down lower than our previous low. If we do break our previous low, we may be in for some more pain, same with CleanSpark. But so far it seems like Btbt is trying to maintain its support that is previously broken, but you can see that the market definitely reacts to this level. You'll see that back in summer of 2023, this was a support. On our pullback, it became a resistance. Once more, it became a bouncing off point, another support point. And we did see an accelerated negative reaction on this breakdown. So I do think we're at a pretty important point for Btbt. If we break down from here, I think it's very likely we go to fill this gap, which in my opinion would be fantastic. And if Bitcoin happens to start running, if Btbt doesn't go down to fill that gap, I'd expect $3 to become a resistance. But to me, Btbt is still a great add. We're down 46% from our top here, and I do think we'll see some upcoming hype regarding the Ethereum spot ETFs. And with BitDigital being a Bitcoin miner that also stakes Ethereum, we may see some additional hype draw in here. But let me know what you guys think about GBTC selling, being outshadowed by the new spot Bitcoin ETFs buying. I do think we're starting to see a shift here. Hopefully we continue to see that through the rest of the week. And also, what miners are you picking up right now? I think it's still a great opportunity, and despite seeing a decent run yesterday, now's a great opportunity to continue to buy while they're still low. This is definitely going to be a pretty volatile week with the FOMC meeting coming, and as for the Bitcoin halving, we are only under 80 days away, just a little over 2 months away. You'll be surprised how quickly we get to that point. But thanks again for watching, guys, and I'll catch you next time.